Thank you. So as we think through or contextualize of who everyone on the panels are, would you like to kind of talk through your journeys, right? You've all made it to a point where you're managing teams, managing initiatives, and successfully managing, I would say, personal and business lives, right? So through that journey, there's always formidable moments that would challenge you or things that you think people could be able to take away from as learning opportunities. So I'd love if you could each just take a few minutes to talk through your journeys and some of those formidable moments that folks could learn from. Yeah?
Okay, yep. So my marketing journey or career journey really started at an advertising agency, which was very fun, wild. Wouldn't trade it though. And I think one of the things that was interesting is to get into an ad agency, you have to have agency experience. So it was a double-edged sword. Somebody took a bet on me. It worked out, I hope, for them. For me, it did. But I got to work on amazing clients, amazing and very versatile projects as well, which I loved. Some of the creative, too, and some of the just caliber of talent at an agency is really exciting to be around and to be part of. And I did move client side after I had kids, unfortunately, because agencies aren't known for their great maternity leave. And I went to Choice Hotels where I was in the loyalty space, which was also really cool. I was there during the pandemic, which also another wild ride, but learned a ton and got to meet some really great people and learn more about retention, which is always a side of the customer that I really enjoy. Not just how we get them, but how we keep them, how we really nurture them and make them value us more and value them more. And now, I'm at Weight Watchers, and my journey there, personal and professional, started as a member. I, supported the restaurants a lot in the pandemic, and so I needed to find something that helped me from a health perspective, and Weight Watchers showed up, and it changed my life. This position opened up, and now, I'm doing things that I've always dreamed of doing and working on campaigns with a really good purpose. So, and that's, part of my journey.
So I started in the beauty business. That was my entree. I was really lucky I got a job before I even graduated college. I went to NYU. I'm always been a very hard worker, so it kind of fit my personality that I wouldn't even go to my graduation because I was working. It's just who I was, but I was also incredibly introverted, and working in beauty, it's female-dominated, which is great, but highly competitive. Everybody wants that job at Estee Lauder. And it taught me that I had to have a voice. I had to speak up, speak for myself, showcase my work. So it was an incredible learning opportunity for somebody like me who was hardworking but super shy. And then from there, I jumped into the ad world. So I also worked in advertising, some PR, some creative agencies, and again, had a really great opportunity to learn, because when you're in advertising, you have to look across industries and really be the smartest person in the room on behalf of your client. So it taught me to be quick, to speak with authority, and sort of gain trust from CMOs. And huge and great opportunity, absolutely exhausting, super hard if you're having kids to be in an ad world. And I really did struggle sort of juggling senior level positions with children who really need you. So I left the ad world and landed at the Vitamin Shoppe. And this is a great position for me because it kind of encompasses both my experience within a brand, but also the learnings I had within the ad world, whether it was thinking through sort of organizing integrated marketing solutions and putting kind of everybody at the seat. Every channel has a seat at the table now, as opposed to how we work. So I really brought a lot of those learnings from both ad and beauty into the Vitamin Shoppe, and I've been there for a while now.
Yeah, for myself, I'll say, I'll tell you my career in maybe 4 chapters. So, I started out on the agency side of the business, and what you learn there is that the client doesn't give you any of the information, but you're expected to have an answer by a certain date. So you got to fill in the blanks. So very much a training ground for kind of my career. at that point, I moved to, I actually was independently. I owned my own business because when I was in the agency business, I saw how much we were charging for basically at sometimes my ideas. And I decided that I was going to make that money. But it was also going to be the part of, I had young kids and I wanted to create my own schedule that worked for me. So I did that when my kids were young. And from there, it actually led me back to a full-time opportunity. Prior to joining Nestle, I was the brand director of Glidden Paint, which is sold through the Home Depot company-owned stores and Walmart. And from there, not to get too deep, but I started to think about, kind of what I wanted to do at the last chapter of my career. And my oldest child has a ton of food allergies, and I started thinking about healthcare or food as where maybe I wanted to go, because I know exactly what I'm doing with the very last chapter of my career. And so that was one of the things that brought me to Nestle. But what I would tell you about my journey, and because I didn't get into all the details in there, is that you absolutely have to take the risk. I went backwards more times than maybe maybe people know, backwards in title and those kinds of things, because I was more interested in growing and developing than I was about titles on paper in order to sort of advance my career and to develop as a marketer.
Thank you. When I look back on my career, I have been really fortunate to work on some incredible brands that align with my passion. So I love to eat, I love to shop, I love to travel, and I love to work out. And my career has allowed me to start in CPG, working for Purdue Foods. I worked for Pandora Jewelry, launched that brand across North and South America, transitioned to Hilton, had an incredible time really getting to know the hospitality industry and putting a greater emphasis on people. And ultimately now in kind of the wellness industry, I think at the end of the day, some of my takeaways have always been around kind of you're in the driver's seat of your career, always be curious and show up and be Lisa. As I reflect on my career and being very ambitious, I always looked up and was like, oh, I want to be like Charisse because she's so analytical, or I want to be like Charlotte because she's just so wonderful with people. And what I recognize is just being me and being the most authentic version of me and showing up and playing to my strengths is really what's going to allow me to continue to grow and make the best connections and build the strongest teams.
Love that. Themes that are coming out of there, right? Aligning passion with where your careers go, a lot of ambition, and I love what you just said of like being authentically yourself. I feel like, at least in the marketing ecosystem, a lot of times it gets lost with title tracking and things like that. So maybe as we kind of think through the journey and continue to evolve the journey for women as we continue to look to elevate them, what would be some of your takes on skills you would challenge them to work on developing proactively that you think would help them continue to elevate and have the opportunities to continue to move up and through the workforce, their careers, and wherever their ambition wants to take them?
For me, and it's something I'm still learning because I don't think there's ever an end to that, is self-awareness. I think it's one of the most important things that somebody can have as a human, let alone anybody in this field. To know your blind spots. We all have them. There is no one who is perfect. And a lot of times where you think you're perfect, sometimes you're not. And to meet others where they help in those blind spots, in those areas where they can play to their strengths and your weaknesses. So not only do you learn from them, but it gives you a lot of great experience, and just awareness to me is one of the more key pieces that I think is missing and good to focus on for anybody. It's something I still work on.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say that most of the women I work with, and I can say this about myself, when I started my career, are not very good at asking for what they need or negotiating. It's usually the men who report into me who are the ones who are asking me for promotions or renegotiating their salaries or looking for ways to navigate their career in a much more aggressive way, and I just don't find too many women who do that. I think women hesitate, or they feel that it's not that they're compromising, we're trying to please everybody around us, including our company, rather than really thinking about ourselves first. So I absolutely think women should take negotiation classes from great books out there on negotiation. I wasn't great at it either. I think we had a conversation earlier about our first children. When I had my child, I was at L'Oreal. They had great maternity leave, but once you got back to work, the hours were horrible. And rather than asking for, you worked there till 10, you kind of had the feeling that you had to be there. with the GM. And instead of asking for what I needed to balance my life at that moment, I left. I went, in a different direction, and I probably could have stayed longer had I just taken the time and understood that, it's okay to tell your company what you need or your boss and renegotiate what your work-life balance looks like. So that's definitely advice I would give to myself when I was younger, but also to a lot of the women that work for me today.
I think for myself, what I would say to anyone, male, female, focus on your strengths. Figure out what they are, brand yourself, and bring them into any environment with which you can. I think that's one of the things as you think about your career, you're kind of developing over time, but is the faster you can figure out what are your strengths, and the more you leverage them, the greater impact that you can have, both on your own career, but on the company in which you're working.
I love all of this advice. I think what I would contribute to the conversation is just if you can dream it, you can do it. I'm a big believer that thoughts are things, and if you want to know kind of where you're going to be in 3 years and 5 years, focus on what you're thinking about and where you're spending energy, and know that it's a journey. It's not about a destination, so have fun along the way and have confidence that, if you have these big ambitions, if you have these dreams, if you have these goals, you will get there. It might not happen overnight, but if you just stay consistent and persistent, it'll happen.
Love all that. I think as we think through journeys of everyone that is trying, to progress their career, and we think about women specifically, one of the things I want to chat through a little bit is mentorship, right? It's super important, but I think on both sides of it, right? I'd like the panelists to take one or both sides of this question is, what advice would you give to mentorees, yes, that are looking to get into the space, or looking to become that, and then mentors, right? When you see an opportunity, what can you do to make yourself more open to make that relationship stronger, to essentially take down the barrier for someone to ask to be a mentor? So I'll kind of open that and kind of your thoughts on just mentorship as a whole.
So one thing I learned that is if you're the last person in the room, you have to sit next to the speaker and be the first person to answer the question.
You want to rattlesnake it back? We'll start with...
All right, I'm happy to kick this off. I am a big believer in mentors and mentorships. I feel like it's going to come across kind of strong. But when I was fresh out of school, I went straight to LinkedIn, looked for people who had the jobs that I wanted, the titles that I wanted, the ambition that I had, and I started cold emailing them and just like saying, hey, I'm so inspired by your career. Would you be open to a conversation? Can I treat you to a cup of coffee? And so I think just kind of looking up and looking around you and seeing who you're inspired by the work that they're doing or the way that they treat people or, some of their leadership philosophies and not holding back and not being afraid to ask for a conversation. I think you'd be surprised at how many people got back to me. Being fresh out of school, I'll never forget that the CMO at McCormick, kind of a local company here, wrote me back and we had a conversation, and it's just been an incredible connection that I've had from very early on that, you probably never would have known that you would have access to. I find on kind of looking for a mentor, you have to find kind of the right people, and it has to be a natural connection. But as a mentor, really making sure that, you're helping someone who's that they're coming, I guess, with a question or something that they're looking to solve, because so much of your career really is up to you, and you can get the best advice in the world, but if you're not willing to kind of put in the work to really do some of that self-awareness, self-reflection, and understand what you're hoping to get out of it, then it's just going to be a conversation. But I'm a big believer that, one conversation, one decision could change your life. So not being afraid to put yourself out there, have some of these vulnerable moments, and just ask for the conversation.
I think when it comes to maybe career, I'll say that it's important not to mix up mentors and advocates. And really, I think, because you'll find part of my branding is I'm going to be really real and I'm going to be direct. You need advocates in order to advance your career. And the way that you get advocates isn't necessarily, meeting with folks. It's about getting into foxholes with people. And so my advice to you would be, I kind of talked about, maybe taking a chance and having risks, is to get involved in different teams, get in foxholes with different groups, find people that, you can go through an experience with who will speak for you in rooms where decisions will be made that will advance your career. So it is great to have mentors, but it is advocates that you need, and you need to make sure that you're not mixing the two things when you're thinking about your career.
I love that, foxholes. Well, I actually think the word mentorship is very formal, because you can actually find people who inspire you in all different places in your life, and even below you, across, above. It doesn't have to be just somebody who's 5 steps ahead of you. It can actually be somebody who's across the table, a peer. So I have one peer I work very closely with who oversees analytics. And I love working with her, and I ask her for advice all the time on different things because the way she thinks is incredibly different. And I want to look for people who are thinking differently than I am, who have a slightly different prism, either on my either it's personal questions or sometimes career-oriented or risks I might be thinking of taking. So I really do look above, across, and even below. I have some individuals who may not be as senior as I am, but they have incredibly great skill sets, whether they are great at modeling or they have incredible speaking abilities that I really admire, and I look for that because I have areas of improvement as well. So the formality of mentorship sounds really scary. It really doesn't have to be. As long as you understand what are the weaknesses or gaps in yourself that you're trying to cover and fulfill through the questions that you're asking the people above, across you. And as far as typically the people I mentor are people who've worked for me, who've moved on, moved in different industries, or somehow I was associated with and I'm still connected. It's really great to have those threads. And it's, for me, I always find it incredibly rewarding. I've gotten a few times either letters or cards from individuals I've supported, advocated for sometimes. It's probably one of the most satisfying things you can do in your career. I actually did some teaching at NYU. And the reason why I decided to teach was because I thought, wow, I can take all the things I love about working with mentors and then giving it back to students. So it's the same kind of a rewarding feeling.
Amazing. And now I can be the last one to say all really great stuff that I agree with. And also agree with finding inspiration in different places. So whether you're a mentor or a mentee, you're either giving or getting, and it can be different. I mean, one of the reasons I'm here today is to meet people and to find that inspiration and maybe share some. But I love what you said too, Lisa, about LinkedIn, because it's so true, and I think it's a Michael Scott, aka Wayne Gretzky quote, and I think I'm gonna butcher it, but you only make the shots you take, right? So I did the same thing. I reached out to people on LinkedIn and got a lot of no responses, but then there were a lot of people who I still talk to today, and we have something at Weight Watchers called a donut meeting, where if you're new, they set you up with a 15-minute meeting to meet other people across, different areas. And I was connected with somebody in Egypt who barely spoke a word of English, and it's actually one of my favorite people that I still connect with to this day. And he practices his English, and I learn more about his family. And just that alone, even though it's not a typical mentor-mentee relationship, it's changed the way I look at things. It's changed some of the gaps I've had in myself. And it's been really rewarding. So that's something that I think is important, is it doesn't have to be the formal, although those are good to have as well. And I think some companies too do a really good job at providing those resources, going back to what we were saying too. It's important to ask for them, but it's also, a lot of companies have started offering career coaching, which I think is really important, and to give some of those resources that I think a lot of us don't always ask for too.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think it's all spot on. I love the concept of advocacy. I think that's a really cool way of separating the two and the formalness of it, and then turning it into teaching, right? Where you can actually deploy those relationships. I remember one of my first job out of school, there was the CEO of the company I became really close with is a woman, and she gave me the advice of, if you want to learn or if you want to be mentored, surround yourself by people that are different than you, right? So that they will round you out, and because you certainly don't want 1,000 little Patricks running around. You need to round everybody out. So it really resonates there. Let's shift a little bit to brand perspectives, right? So I think we've done an okay job. Can always to do more, but elevating women in the workplace. And I think that brands have evolved from that. Workplaces have evolved from that. Brands have evolved from that. What are some of the things that get you most excited about having women in more prominent leadership roles? And how do you think that is positively affecting just overall our workplace dynamics as well as the brand's perception and how we're communicating out? And we can start on the end with Louisa, or right in the middle, whoever wants to go first.
Sure. I'm happy to speak to some work that we're doing at solidcore. Our mission is actually to create the strongest version of you. And we have a pretty incredible product, a pretty incredible workout that you will walk out feeling the challenge, feeling the burn, feeling that sense of accomplishment. I see someone nodding yes. This is a pretty intense workout, low impact, high intensity. But at the end of the day, it is about building strength. And when you're building strength, it translates to building confidence. And when you are confident, you take that into all aspects of your life. And so when we think about women kind of growing into these senior leader roles, you know, they're really coming with that strength, with that confidence, with new perspectives and new ways of how we might approach connecting with customers, connecting the business goals with client goals. And, you know, at the end of the day, for us, it's really about driving that impact that women have other women that they can look to, that they're going to drive more values into the work that we're doing, as well as just having so much more flexibility in how you might classify what a day looks like. So one of the things I think that's really transformed through the workplace and having more women leaders and just the pandemic overall is just having that flexibility to be a whole human. That, you know, I'm not just, you know, the VP of marketing here at solidcore, but I am a mom, I'm a friend, I'm a wife, and making space within our work days to show up in all ways. And so that's something that I think is really transforming. We were talking a little bit earlier today about, you know, the workplace really changing, that it's not the 9 to 5, that, you know, I might get in at 10 and I might leave at 2 or 3 so that I can get back and avoid some of the traffic and the commute. But I think just having more diversity in leadership and kind of pushing boundaries and challenging what the status quo is in terms of what a typical day might look like or what you need from your workplace is something we should continue to advocate for.
Yeah, I would say, like, so the business that I'm in, it really kind of markets to everybody, not just everyone loves pizza, right? Regardless. So I would probably say, really kind of in response to your question, like we have so much more that we need to do relative to, I'll say, elevating, you know, women and you know, getting to new places within organizations. So I hunger for more. Actually, I don't think that as a society and probably really at any company, we're where we need to be, or maybe where we want to be. So I'm looking for more in the future, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting moment. There are a lot of statistics that women are leaving the workforce, especially younger women, women with new families. So it's kind of a pivotal moment to understand why. What is it about our post-COVID moment that is forcing women out of the workforce, and what can we do to keep them? I've been lucky to work with mostly female-led companies. Beauty is mostly female, although I can't say L'Oreal at that time, especially the C-suite was not. But my C-suite today, I think we're 80% women. I've worked with founder-led brands, women-led, so which has been great to always have that representation of a strong female lead who also can encompass and kind of some of the things you were saying, really be true to herself, be empathetic, be all the things that you know, maybe stereotypical of a woman, but that make great leaders. I would say I definitely want more and kind of want to continue to bring up women. I want to make sure women don't leave. I also would love to see more diversity in general in leadership. I think there's still a lot of work to do. Our brand, we service, the customers we service really are a reflection of the U.S. in terms of both gender and ethnicity, and I would love to see our company also reflect that in our makeup. So I think there's more work to do in some of those pieces, because I think when you have representation internally, you can better service your customers. You can reflect who they are as well. You can think through the business. You have different voices at the table, and I think that's super important. While I also want to make sure that women get what they need so they stay, and they get the careers that they deserve, and that they can balance all the great things about being both a parent and somebody who's working?
I definitely think we can do more too. I'm lucky to work for a company that was founded by a woman in 1963. Talk about different times. She had to get her husband to sign off on the papers to even start it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's really cool the type of female power that we have, and I think marketing in general is typically a female-oriented industry, and there's a lot more that we can do. Our target is also, very female-focused. So, but we do need to do more in terms of diverse audiences and getting the right people at the table across the board. But it's interesting too. One of the other things I heard recently that was fascinating is the 40-hour work week was created when people worked 9 to 5, and it was men, and women, were the ones at home taking care of the children and cooking and cleaning. But what is that now? What does that look like? So I think we've just absorbed it, which also happened in the pandemic too. So very interesting to look at and excited to see what comes in the future.
Yeah, appreciate those perspectives. Right, we've started. It's a long journey, right, to get there, and there's a lot more we could do. And going back to Mel earlier, like, what if? There's certain what ifs we could do to break down more barriers and open that up. As we wrap, I'll leave with one question with all of y'all is, if you were sitting in the audience today, you could say something to yourself at the start of your journey to getting to where you are now, what is that one thing you would want yourself to hear?
I'll go first. I said this to myself this morning. I get a lot of my wisdom from Disney movies, which I don't know if that's right or wrong. But there was this Frozen 2 moment, I don't know if everyone's familiar, where Anna has a very complex situation and she sings a song. I won't sing it, but the kind of moment is about doing, when you don't know what's right to do, when you're overwhelmed, just do what is next. The next thing, just the first thing to do. Sometimes it's just walk or just breathe. But I often remind myself of that now, and kind of what we were talking about earlier is you have all this drive. I wanted to be on Madison Avenue in New York and, wear suits and everything. Sometimes I get to, but still, it's, I didn't know what was right for me at the time. So just to not get overwhelmed, to think of what's right and that next step is important.
Love Frozen. I would say patience. I was not patient when I was younger. I moved around a lot because I got bored quickly. I was always looking for another business problem. And what I've learned is that if you're patient within your role, you actually, there's a lot to learn again, from the people around you, from the problems, how things change. And marketing is such a great field because it's ever changing. So being more patient in the role I have so I can learn and grow and sort of deliver and sort of follow things through is something I wish I had told myself when I was younger, rather than being like, all right, I did that, time to move on. So patience.
Yeah, for me, I think if I go back in time, I think the first thing I would do is just give myself a hug and say, like, it's all going to work out. Because we all have days where you think, is this all going to work out? But if something more inspiring maybe for myself in the group is, I mentioned just the importance of knowing and understanding your strengths and playing to them. I would whisper to myself, man, play to your strengths and definitely take the risk. That's where all the growth is. Every single time, take the risk.
Wow, I love all of this advice. I'm definitely taking some of that home with me today. I think the two things I would tell myself is that there's joy in the work, which is a reminder to enjoy the journey and not just try to get to the destination. And that through the work is really where you build deep connections with your peers, with your team, with our customers. And then I would close it out with that nothing motivates like a good example, so be one. And make sure that you are giving back and kindness matters and being a person that people want to work with and want to work for and collaborate with and do amazing things together.
Cool. Appreciate that. I'm expecting my second child, who's a daughter, and hearing all this. We have it recorded on YouTube, but I'll probably play this back for her eventually because I think the messages you all are sharing are super important, and I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know all of you through this process and the conversation. So thanks so much for taking the time today and giving everyone some advice.
Thank you.